Hello ladies and gentlemen, excuse me a little bit, kind of like holding on there with my fingernails right now, but here I am at Glastonbury. It's the 23rd of June 2019 and for me it's like I'm in Glastonbury. I'm at what's called now, the sculpture's called the Rainbow, and its creator is the man standing behind the camera right now. He goes by the name of Paul Insect, and he has designed this rather wonderful thing that's come about by a whole wonderful story. And he's basically the inspiration for this project, and he never likes to show his face. He's one of those characters. He works with Banksy a lot. He's very cool, very low profile, and sort of like, you know, doesn't all that sort of stuff, but you know, he never shows his face, so I can't point the camera to him, but he is holding the camera and he is the cameraman right now. So he's going to pass the camera back to me, and I'm going to take you around this little structure because I've been helping him make this little thing with his big thing over the last few days, and it's been a wonderful thing to be involved with. And thanks to Shangri-La and to all the wonderful people that have actually pushed through and make it happen. So he's going to pass the camera over to me, and I'm going to take you through where we are right now in the astronomical wonders of the world. So hi ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here again. It's the this is the follow-up to the video that I made where Paul Insect was holding the camera just earlier. For you it's just earlier. For you it's, I think, there's not a two-day gap, but for me there's been a two-day gap between that video, and I wanted to talk to you about where we stand in the position of Planet X right now. And it's going to be a bit raw this I'm not going to have to put overlays on it, and so, but certainly in the last video that I did, you know, you've got all of the pretty much the latest flybys that we've had up to now. And if you've been following my channel for this long, this kind of like this kind of Dobbs timeline that I've been running, it's kind of like, you know, what started with this kind of 200-day anomaly, realizing that all these different asteroids or these different comets, and you know, Comet Evelyn, Comet Ison, Halley-Bopp, all these kind of comets, we start seeing these bigger patterns behind them, where originally I was questioning them and saying, how come there's a 198-day gap between these sightings, and how come I can predict and keep predicting? I've done what, 13, 14 predictions, and every time I've said it's going to fly by, it's flown by. Do you remember when I said it would fly by on the 25th of January, and 2017, and it flew by on the 21st of January? Came with a massive 8.0 earthquake in where was that? It was Papua New Guinea on around about the 21st of January 2017, the same day as Trump's inauguration. Isn't that strange? And of course I'd said it would fly by around about the 23rd of June, and ironically on the same day as Brexit, 23rd of June 2016, and then we get the flyby. Remember Glastonbury was all flooded, London all flooded, you know, it was incredibly bad weather, and this thing most notably brings bad weather more than anything else. And just we haven't got as such we're past the flybys, but right now we've just had a very kind of we've just basically, what's happened is we've learned that if one, Nibiru is not impossible to believe, two seems a lot more difficult. And nonetheless, we've got two twin-tail objects that are flying around up there, affecting this planet, that we've got no end of corroborating data. I've made no end of videos saying when we're we're going to get a flyby, and sure enough it flies by. You know, certainly December last year, do you remember NASA just recently, in actually about 6 months after it occurred, in late December, you had the biggest recorded asteroid coming in for a very long time over the Baltic Sea. It was like 10 times bigger than a Hiroshima bomb, the kind of like the heat signature that it made as it burnt up in the atmosphere over the I think it was over the Baltic Sea. And of course, you know, Wrap the News, I don't know if you remember when he posted at the same time a whole load of what looked like asteroids in the sky, not in the night sky, but in the day sky. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of them. They're all in the last video, so I'm not going to do the overlays for this. All these things I'm saying, they're all obviously in the last video. But what we've actually realised is, since I've started kind of developing a better understanding of Solar System Sandbox, which is a program that enables me to set our solar system into motion and give it a completely 3D kind of like look at the 3D effect of it moving through time and space, and then adding a binary system and adding different densities to that binary system, to that dwarf planet, and adding that to it and seeing how it interacts with another big object and what that would look like. And I've put all of those in the last video. And of course we had the incredible sightings that came in all in the last video and in most of my videos really, because it's been consistently coming round, hasn't it? We've gone from this point of realizing there's a 198 day interval between these flybys, and then from that it slowly became apparent that this 198 day was actually 2 of those cycles, which made 396 day cycle. But as we've progressed further, and with the amount of shots we've had of the pair, or the twins as Alex Lugin calls them, we started to realise that these 2 objects are, all as bizarre as it sounds, seem to be moving in a fashion where collectively the pair of them seem to make this odd pattern together, which is absolute. The whole thing is so cosmic, really. The whole thing, the amount of cosmic alignment going on in the movement of this system, because now we realise it is 2 objects, one orbiting within the other. All of these planets moving in this other system, in the Planet X system, are in what clearly seems to be a conical system. And all that can really tell us as much as anything else that we too must be in a conical system. And so I want to start thinking about when exactly the next 2 big flybys are going to mostly affect us. And I'm not going to give you 2 specific dates today. I'm pretty much guessing that they're going to be, because of the big sighting that happened on the August the 17th when I went to do the talk in America. Do you remember I flew out there? And I know I repeat this information, but there's always new people coming here. And here I am working at Glastonbury, and I'm amongst friends here, and I've been so busy that I haven't been able to respond much to the channel. I've been helping sort of like Paul Insect and Simon Vaughan and Shangri-La do this Rainbow Man on the Hill, which has been a fantastic project to be involved with, and I've been obviously helping build the Gorilla Bar, and there's only 1,000 passes to the Gorilla Bar this year because it is a crew bar, but any one pass gets as many people as you can bring along with you in the space. So it's kind of like, it sometimes seems a bit cliquey, but the whole idea of these kind of like these crazy wristbands that kind of seem to get you into exclusive places they're not trying to really be cliquey. None of these bars are trying to be cliquey. What they're trying to do is make sure that anyone who's in that space at any given time is there with other people that they know. So you haven't got this kind of environment where someone's going to walk in looking for a party. They're going to be going in, having a party with all interconnected to keep the energy as fluid as possible. And of course we always put a spring kind of wooden dance floor in the Gorilla Bar, so it's fantastic for dancing. So if you do get into the Gorilla Bar, please grab someone and dance with them. It's all about dancing. It's all about kind of movement. It's going to be a lot of fun in there. It is difficult to get into, but like I say, a bit of blag, you can often do it. And if you can be with someone who's got one of those cards, or do a little bit of talk, you can get into all of these kind of backstage kind of bars. Like I say, they're not really trying to be cliquey and exclusive. They're trying to make it so the energy was always working in that space, and that's the whole idea of these spaces. I think anyway. It does have that kind of cliquey exclusive vibe, but it's not really intending to be that way. But that's where I'm going to be. If you can find us in the Gorilla Bar, no doubt I'm going to be doing a few shifts in there, and I'll be loitering with intent. But so we've got two big flybys coming up, and I wanted to sort of like talk to you about, because I can't imagine after last year. You saw the size of it in December last year, when at the same time we had the asteroids. You saw the size of it when it went past. You remember I made the video before and I said, you know, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but you cannot tell me. And do you remember in September I made the video and I said oceanic anomaly is imminent, you'll see it on my channel. And that video was made just before that tsunami came in, and I said, guys, you cannot ignore this. You cannot pretend that this isn't going on. Well, you can, but what do you gain out of pretending that all this carbon dioxide isn't spewing out of all these volcanoes? And what do you gain out of pretending that all these volcanoes aren't splitting open nuclear reactors? What do you gain out of joining an agenda which wants you to build 1 billion new cars, all running on electric, without any clean energy solution to run them other than nuclear power stations, when you can see that you are in a time when the earth is shaking? You can see that Chernobyl, without any doubt, was caused by an earthquake on the 26th of April 1986. Remember, that's when Kilauea last went, was it Kilauea or, yeah, when Kilauea last went off, 1986. That same time when we had, you know, we had, you know, that the water going red in places in Africa. We had all the same things that we're seeing when this thing flies by. Do you remember just before Trump's inauguration, when on the 25th, where I was just talking about earlier, and we had all that red dust coming down, and we had the Red Sea again, you know, and sure enough, you know, the last flyby in December, around about the same time where we saw the asteroids, and where we had the big asteroid coming in over the Baltic Sea. Exactly the same time, you saw the asteroid spinning through space. You literally, in the daylight sky, there was bold as brass, big as you like, and there you could see the big rocky structure of these things spinning in space. A lot of people say, oh, that's just the kind of alien kind of footage, or the mothership footage of the sperm-like UFOs, whatever they were, that was caught the year before over Mexico. Totally different. Each one of those little sperm-like motherships, as some people called them, that were seen, that looked very similar in a sense, because they were white dots on these on a blue sky background. But these were what Wrap the News posted on that late December last year, was very, very clearly rocks spinning in space, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And if they're spinning in space, and you could see they were moving at different speeds, so you could really get a kind of an idea of the direction of the tail, and the kind of fact it wasn't coming exactly parallel to Earth. It was coming kind of going at a different angle, which is why you had this kind of this depth of field you could see by the varying speeds of these huge rocks spinning in space as they went by Earth. Why would we want to deny this? What do we gain out of pretending that if we build all these nuclear power stations all over the world and print another 1 billion cars, we're going to save the world? What benefit is it for you? Are we trying to save the US dollar, or are we trying to save the world? You know, the US dollar is built on this kind of like, on this energy. We can see that they're going to go back into full-scale carbon trading. That's the story that's coming, that we're going back into again. That same old story that who was it? Al Gore came out with the whole kind of global warming thing. We're just reinventing that whole story again, because we can see how many billions, trillions that big business is gonna sort of like, it's gonna create as a result of all that greenwashing, to pretend that this thing doesn't disrupt and rupture nuclear power stations. You know, we saw it with Fukushima and we saw it with Chernobyl. We can see now the whole three-dimensional structure of the movements of Planet X. It's revealed so much. We know that, you know, you think about Carlos Ferrada's prediction on the 20th of January 1939, where he said, you know, there would be a massive earthquake in Chile on the 20th of January 1939, and it's, you know, the reason why he could predict that so succinctly, I think, was because of, you know, the Pacific Basin floor is made of kind of like is molten magma, like sort of stuff comes out of a volcano that's solidified, and it creates a kind of basalt, a rock called basalt. And that's the kind of mantle floor, and obviously it's sitting up against the Andes and these massive kind of granite-based mountains. So they're two very different substrates for a start. And you can imagine as the ocean is moving up and moving around with the movement of a big celestial object coming past, you can imagine how it can draw the ocean in different places. And of course it's like two different substrates along a line. It's like sort of like you know, when you're sort of like painting a wall and you've got two different surfaces, like a piece of timber meeting maybe concrete. When any flexibility in those two, you're going to know always where that crack line is going to occur. And I think Carlos Frada's prediction was because he could see the obvious nature of the difference in substrates and the fact that you were going to get this massive oceanic movement putting enormous great pressure at various points on that enormous Pacific Basin plate. And it was going to become very obvious where those plates were going to shift, which is why he could be so accurate. Now, whether I could get it within 4 days of his, because he said it would occur on the 24th of January, and it occurred on the 20th. And I've always been no more than 4 days out in my prediction, like I did on the 20. I said it would be up on the 25th of January 2017, as I've done with all the flybys since 2015, and there's been many. I've never been more than 4 days out in any of those predictions. And remember, I always used to sort of like use a kind of 200-day timeline because it worked on a 200-day timeline. But when I did it on a 198-day, it failed. And then every 4 years, I'd have to readjust. Every year, I'd have to readjust it. And so you worked out overall, it was a 198-day kind of interval between the sightings. And yet, you could only predict them accurately if you did it every 200 days. But you'd have to delete kind of 4 days. Peculiar in a sense every kind of year to work it, and you ended up kind of with this odd pattern where you'd have this 4-day anomaly, and what it is this 4-day anomaly, I'm of the mind, is the difference between the one planet and the other planet, or one twin tail object and the other twin tail object. And I'm of a mind now that this first object that we've just collectively been called Nibiru, as I described in my last video, when we had that 8.0 earthquake earlier in North Peru, I can't remember the exact date, but it was all in the last video, but when we had that 8.0, I knew that it was right in the midway point. So we have these kind of like 4 corners, if you like. We have that kind of like, remember on 27th of February 2010, 8.8 in Chile again, and then 1 year and 13 days later, the big Fukushima. So we've got this point. Then we've got coming over to kind of like the kind of May-June time. You remember the sort of like because we're closing in like that, because it's a ring and this thing is passing through the edge of that ring. It's condensing down, getting closer and closer and closer to the center. So on one side it starts on the 27th of February 2010. Then it's the 11th of March 2011, it's going that way, but on the other side it's coming down, so it's like the 23rd of June 2016, and it's getting closer and closer depending on its alignment as it's going around. We're talking about being close to the orbital track, not the actual planet orbiting on that orbital track. Now when those two align together, then you've got big trouble, which is what we're coming to in August and December, January next year. So we'd seen it in 23rd of June, then it moved down, and then the alignment point happened on the 4th of May last year when Kilauea went off, and suddenly it went off and it started pumping out magma non-stop for 6 weeks because the planet itself was so close to the Earth. It was pulling on the magma of Earth, just like the moon pulls on the oceans of Earth, and so it's pulling the magma up through all those kind of vents or volcanoes, and releasing that pressure, which is why we constantly saw that flow coming out of Hawaii at that time. And when we'd had that 8.0 in North Peru just gone, that last big earthquake, we knew that even though we've just got this system, the planet has actually just gone past us, this second inner orbiting Nibiru, this one of the inner orbiting twin, if you like, that went through the central point when we were close to it. That was the central point, which means that whole inner ring, that first twin tail object which caused Fukushima, and cause Kilauea to erupt, that central point in the middle of that, as it's gone down and through past the kind of like the orbital track of Earth, has passed us. We have done half the system. Now I'm of a mind that that ring affects the southern hemisphere of our planet, and that affects the southern hemisphere of our planet most of all, and up to the sort of up to the equator line, and back, obviously clearly a little bit above because of what we saw happen in Japan. But this second object that we're coming into now, the furthest orbiting object we keep seeing, Matt Rogers was the first one who caught it on the 15th of August. Same time, that 15th of August 2016, we get the amazing shot. Matt Rogers, the first kind of English filmmaker outside of myself that started making videos when I'd been watching his channel for a while, and he was kind of all about kind of geoengineering and kind of like chemtrails and all that sort of stuff. But he'd start seeing the red glow in the up in the north of England, and he tracked off to Hull, and he staked it out every night, and he'd waited there all night thinking at some point or other that glow might just pop over the horizon. I might actually get to see what it is. And on the 15th of August 2016, he got the most amazing epic footage, which was just like the famous 2013 footage that was seen in Australia, where the guy had seen it twice and said, what the hell is that? He thought it was a UFO rising up over the coast off the coast of Australia. And of course, that's one of the most epic. These are standalone bits of footage of the most epic proportions, where you actually get to see, just like we saw on Trump's inauguration, where it came in over Mexico, filled up the day sky, exactly as I say. I mean, if he comes in and I say afterwards, oh, that's a planet and that sort of stuff, you're going to say, no, Dave, that's just a cloud and that sort of stuff. But if I say before, 6 months before, you're going to see a massive grey sphere on the horizon. You're going to have a big gaseous tail around it, and then it's going to sweep off and be a massive twin tail thing that takes up the whole horizon, and you're just going to watch it spinning off out as it comes in and goes out. If I say that 6 months before that, yes, what you're going to see at that time, and it's going to come with a massive earthquake, and you get the whole lot in the day when Trump's saying he's going to build the wall and block off Mexico and da 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 da. This is all pressure to force all of these countries into free trade deals. It's to basically say, we're not going to do business with you unless you sign a free trade deal. Same thing that's happening with the rest of Europe. You know, we're desperately trying to force all these countries into a free trade deal where they surrender their sovereignty by joining a member state dispute system which overrides their existing judicial and legal systems. So they can't say no to anything unless they go to these massively expensive court processes that operate outside of their own countries, of their own kind of recognised sovereignty. It means you have no sovereignty. It means you have no sovereignty. It means you have surrendered. You know, on the battlefield, if you sue for peace, it means you've completely surrendered. You're losing or you've lost, and you're being given a dignified exit. And that's what signing one of these free trade deals is. It's surrendering with what's seen to be a dignified exit, where you give up before the fight. And that's what signing a free trade deal is. It's a complete surrender of sovereignty. It means genetically modified food. It means late stage pregnancies. It means fracking. It means anything that stands in the way of corporate profit. Can be removed. I.e. you, and your passion to save your world. It means that's overridden. It means it has no say against corporate profit. And so this is all about. This is an age-old thing this thing has always come about, and it's been coming about for eons, and it is like the policeman of this world. And like I say, where we've experienced the kind of this inner ring that services, if you like, the bottom and the central kind of like aspects of the globe. This next one that comes in August, September, and then it if this is the back from say August to December, January, the back ring of Earth, if you like, going from as the Earth moves from August right round and comes around to December around here, this aspect here is where the whole kind of external, the furthest orbiting planet of the Planet X system will clip both sides of those, and will be running almost exactly the same speed as Earth as it goes through, and so we will be closest to it, this second system, which we haven't been that close to overall for probably, since the 20th of January 1939, which is when we would have last experienced this very planet. So that's what we're about to go by now. We've had a lot of flybys so far, a lot of evidence, so just running through that, let's just recap on that. So we had Matt Rogers on the 15th of August 2016, and then the year later, on the 17th of August, we had the big sighting on both sides of the Atlantic. It was seen in Portugal and it was seen in Brazil. It was the same day as the ESO, the European Southern Observatory, said that they'd observed a gravitational anomaly which came with a massive gamma ray radiation burst at the same time. Now, if light travels at this, we were told, ESO told us it was two neutron stars colliding 230 million light years away. This was literally the official statement, the official press release that was given out after. Now, so that means 230 million light years ago, this occurred, and the experience just hit us. Now, some say that the electromagnetic energy is kind of instantaneous, but the light travels at the speed of light. So 230 million light years away means it happened 230 million light years ago, and the light just hit us. Which is kind of weird, because you would have thought that if there was a big kind of gamma ray radiation, which is a light which travels at 230 million light years ago, that means that was the light coming from 230 million years ago. And yet the electromagnetic energy hit us instantaneously at the same time, which would suggest that if the electromagnetic energy also travels at exactly the same speed as light. That's what that equation means to me. If the gamma ray radiation hits you at the same time as the electromagnetic energy, and you're suggesting that all these things are 230 million light years away, it means they're all travelling at the same speed. But are they? Are they? Many people, Wall Thornhill is of a mind that electromagnetic energy, his whole kind of Thunderbolt project and Thunderbolt theory is of a mind that that electromagnetic energy is instantaneous. Truly, I do not know, but when you put those two together, it would certainly be an indication that this thing was a lot closer than 230 million light years ago. In actual fact, I'd said it was flying right by then, exactly that same time when I flew out to America to do the big talk and to put it all out there, and we were all getting excited saying, here it comes, and of course as soon as I landed, Steve Olsen picks me up and says, Dave, look, it flew by literally whilst you're on the plane. It was that insane. So we had the massive sighting then, and of course, because of those sightings, I'd said, in September, because of the movements of it, I knew it was going to be slightly later because of the way the planet moves. And so I'd said this occurrence is going to be closer to September in terms of because it was going to be, we were going to get a bigger effect this year. We hadn't been getting the gravitational effects, but because we'd had the ESO recording a massive gravitational anomaly, we knew that was the first bump, which means we knew the next year we were going to get a much bigger bump. And because we're going to get a much bigger bump, the actual planet itself was still much further away. It was influencing our electromagnetics, but we knew that though we would see it, we wouldn't see it, even though we were close. Both two orbital tracks were very close to each other, Earth and this twin tail object. the planets orbiting those orbital tracks weren't in that close proximity, but they were close enough to cause oceanic anomalies, without a doubt, because we knew it would be 1 calendar month closer to us than it was, or 1/13 of its full orbital circumference closer to us than it would have been the previous year. And so you can imagine it's going to be, if it can cause a tsunami. Last year, just before I said, guys, you cannot call me a madman, you cannot go around and say that when we can lay all of this thing down, all of these timings down exactly, and not be more than 4 days out, just like Carlos Ferrada. So we're all kind of thinking on the same, we're all kind of coming onto the same page here, we're all starting to see it, we're all starting to see how this big timeline works, how it moves. We know the whole 3,600 year, the whole Zecharia Sitchin kind of 3,600 in a galaxy far, far away and a long time ago. It's bullshit, guys. It doesn't work in any real orbital mechanics. You can't have 3,600 year orbits. They're gone. They're gone. This thing comes much faster, but it's much bigger than 4 times bigger than Jupiter. Much bigger. Got a massive density. It's a very, 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 very slow moving thing. It looks always like it's permanently parked wherever it is from our perspective, because it's so big and so slow. And you've got to remember, they're both moving along together like this, in this cycle like this. And so even though they're both moving at probably sort of like very similar sort of speeds, obviously Planet X is moving slightly faster than Earth, they're both kind of moving along together in this spiral, and so compared to each other, they're virtually moving at the same speed. So they look virtually static, parked, if you like, as Nancy Lieder said when she said it's parked in front of the sun, and everyone was just like, "What do you mean it's parked in front of the sun?" But of course, we are all just learning to see our solar system in a more conical nature now. We're learning to understand that the Earth doesn't really orbit the sun. It chases behind the sun and orbits wherever the sun is orbiting. And we're all starting to grasp a different structure to the mechanics of the universe that we're living in, and realizing that NASA, which actually means to deceive in Hebrew, is just one massive deception. And we're starting to realize also that the Jupiter itself, I mean, Jupiter can be seen with a pair of binoculars with its moons. Can you imagine, if we were standing on Dover, out on Dover on a good day, we could see France, and then I say to you, on a really good day, you can see the islands around Africa, and you're like, Dave, don't be silly, you say on a good day you can just about see France. Well, can you imagine, on a good day you go out with a pair of binoculars, there's Jupiter looking bold as brass with all its moons, and Mars remains a tiny star? Think about the logic. We have to start addressing what we're seeing and take our belief stories away from this and this whole conjecture that we've thrown on this thing, and just start playing with what we're seeing, what's really going on, not the story that we're throwing at this. And so we've got a massive flyby coming up, and you've got to ask yourself, if you can absolutely see that Chernobyl was caused by an earthquake, if you can absolutely see that Fukushima was started by a massive earthquake, and if you can absolutely see, just like I said in September before that earthquake occurred, which caused the massive tsunami, where I'd said massive oceanic anomalies imminent, just start to think, why would I say that? Why would I say that why would I put everything I've got on the line to say something like that unless I absolutely knew unless I absolutely knew it was going to happen? And when that happens, it's so obvious. We've seen all these other sightings. What part of ourselves is absolutely desperate for us not to take any action and leave all of those 500-600 nuclear power stations completely running when we absolutely know the Earth is going to shake like we have not experienced for eons? And truly, I don't know, when it comes in August, is it going to come under the Earth or is it going to come over the Earth? Truly, I really don't know. But if I was to guess, which I have to here because I really truly do not know, I would guess by all the movements that we've seen that it will actually go. It will come up in our night sky. It's coming up in our night sky now towards Earth, and it will come over the top of Earth, and then it will head down, and as if it was going, and as Earth is going round, it will look as if it's coming straight towards Earth from the direction of the sun. Even though it's coming over the top, it will appear to us as if it's coming towards Earth from the direction of the sun. And it's very likely that in this year, or January, or kind of like between kind of late December and late January, we get a solar eclipse that could last literally days. It could block out the sun for up to 3 days, and that's kind of like, that's what we are looking at this year because of all the timing. And I've been watching this for a long time. I've never missed, well, I have missed timelines because I missed the June sighting. I didn't understand the June sighting, or the May, the May. Remember when Kilauea went off, and we just didn't understand that sighting. And then it was the June sighting. It was the seismology of it came in with obviously the big volcano in Kilauea on the 4th of May. But the sighting was actually on the 17th of June, the big sighting. And like I say, that's the inner ring. That's what the inner ring, the next ring in the of the Planet X system, the twin tail object that's closer to the Planet X system than this furthest orbiting object, which is what's coming now. So what to do? What do we all do? Well, you know, I wrote a book to say that this is all about, they're going to try and get us out of Europe. That's what they're going to try and get us out of Europe. And do you remember Laughing Gas was all about saying that, and I know a lot of people have been trying to get hold of my book, and apologies about that. I've been so busy doing a million other things that trying to get ready for this and trying to do a lot of other stuff and finishing my mum's flat. And actually I've just managed to find a boat, this boat that needs a lot of work on the hull. And I've often thought about living in a boat and everything else like that, and it's more because of a dream. Not the most safest place for me to do, but I'm not so down about surviving this thing anymore, to be honest with you. It's about whether humanity survives this. It's whether humanity takes the initiative here to act on the information that's coming in and realise this thing ruptures nuclear power stations. And if you leave those nuclear power stations in operation, then regardless of who you are, me, you, all of us will carry the pain of that. And all of us will carry the pain of that. All of us will collectively carry the pain of it. It doesn't matter what you've done to try and stop that process. You will carry the pain of it. And those of you who have orchestrated this to make sure that nobody acts on this information, that have done your level best to rubbish my name. All of you guys out there, you're going to carry that. All of you that have desperately tried to push this agenda for that we need to build 1 billion new cars to save the planet, cover the world with electric cars, knowing there's no clean energy solution to power them, that nothing's out there, and that knowing that volcanoes are absolutely chucking all this carbon dioxide out, but they're just using it as a whole greenwashing process so that you can do all this carbon trading and all the rest of it and make all these 1 billion new cars and force everyone to take all these old cars off the road. The other 1 billion that we printed when we replaced all those old beautiful old motors that were, a little bit less economical, but they were robust and they would last another 20 years. We took them all off the road to replace them with these completely electronic cars, 1 billion of them. That's the cars. 1 billion new cars replaced, all each one consuming 100 times more fuel in its manufacture than the car will ever consume in its life, to give you a car that you know is rammed full of electronics. All the money that's being ripped out of the housing industry that would go into the whole property market, we put it all into new cars. So, finally, when the car's finally repaid, it's worth a couple of grand, full of electronics. You can't fix it when it goes wrong. It's just landfill. It's just landfill. And we've all just bought into this greenwashing bullshit story. And, the big part of the whole, I'm not going to tell you the theme of Shangri-La this year, but it's very much fitting in this story. It's very, very much fitting in this story. They're going to release the real kind of message of what this year is about on Thursday. So I won't release this video because it shows Paul Insect slide slide. Sorry, I shouldn't say slide because it's a sculpture, but everyone keeps saying to me, "Is it a slide?" It kind of looks. Everyone thinks it's a slide, but it's not a slide. I'll take that back. It's a sculpture, so please don't try and slide on it because everyone keeps saying it's a slide. It's not on the top of the hill. It is not a slide. Sorry, that was Freudian slip there. Sorry about that. But it's not a slide, and I've got a funny feeling, and it's not that strong overall. Even though it's got a big steel frame inside of it, it's actually made of quite thin. You know, it's still about 10 mil thick board, but it's kind of like it's not that strong. So please don't try and slide on it because you might fall through it and hurt yourself. And it is a sculpture, and it's a rainbow sculpture, and it's the embodiment of light in form, isn't it? And so for me, it's what we are. We are light. We are the embodiment of light, and we've got to remember that. And we've got to come to the highest aspect of ourselves, the lightest vibration, highest vibration of ourselves right now, because we have a choice in all this. This is what I was always told in this whole process, that ultimately it's only human choice that drives this. Where you choose to align and what you choose to become in all of this. We are going into a state of singularity in all this. That's all that's happening. There's too much technology, and there's just too much dangerous technology on the table now for having humanity being driven by backseat at kind of like astral interference, backseat drivers that are pushing the human agenda into making very stupid decisions, like covering the planet with nuclear power stations at a time when you can clearly see it shaking. You can clearly see it shaking. You know, so all this is about is clearing the airways, and what this thing does more than anything else is its massive electromagnetic energy absolutely rips apart the type of interference that invades the human state, which is invading the human state, which is where all this bullshit narrative which is coming in, which is subverting the human state and ultimately subverting the earth, that is what's getting ripped out. And each and every one of you has a choice of you're the one who's going to have to live and die with the consequences of your choices, or of the choices you make. And so it's not for anyone else to decide which soul you ultimately choose to tally with. And this is why I wrote Laughing Gas. And I've not been that quick to try and get it up there. I've been seeing people saying, "Oh, can you repost the link?" and that sort of stuff. I just realised there ain't time to read Laughing Gas now. There ain't time to read it now, before this big change. The things I'm going to do now is I've got the message out there, and I kind of see I've got so few views now. I just realised the most important thing I can do now is the messages out there, is connect with the people that I love, celebrate, party, and do all the things that I want to do, everything else. And I always wanted, one of my dreams was to own a boat. I always wanted to have a boat, and that's what I want to take through to the other side. And everything that you put F into is all the stuff that you're creating on a high level. All the highest vibrational stuff you create here is what you're creating for yourself on a high vibration. So use this last time, because I don't know how it's going to affect us. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether the big earthquakes that they're going to come in August, September are going to come in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. And I don't know whether or not the big earthquakes are going to come in December or January are going to affect the northern or the southern hemisphere either. But I'm much more of a mind that the northern hemisphere has been very untouched by this so far, and it seems that this thing, it affects all the corners of this earth as it needs to. And we've had our warnings. And our answers are that, that we need to, that the official kind of mainstream media line is that, we dumped all this depleted uranium on Iraq, we dumped all this, no doubt we dumped all this depleted uranium on Libya, no doubt we've, You know, no doubt we dumped all this depleted uranium on Afghanistan, blaming them for bringing down all these wars that we blamed on them, bringing down the towers. And now we are told that we need to hate all of those refugees fleeing our depleted uranium, or the agenda that is driving that in our countries are telling us that we need to hate these people. Do you remember, we all hate Angela Merkel now because she let the refugees in. Evil Angela Merkel. You know, it's and we need to hate Europe. You know, Europe done it. We need to blame Europe for everything the British government did. And of course they've got Boris at the helm. So funny that Boris is at the helm, isn't it, driving all of this at the end. He was always the one who was the free trade deal. Do you remember when I was living outside the Guardian and in my pink rickshaw, and I've often shown you the images of that, and I was out there for 3 weeks. Nothing really went on. I thought, what the hell am I doing out there? And then suddenly Boris Johnson turns up, locks his bike up next to my rickshaw, not knowing it's the Mayor of Londonmobile, comes round and looks down, sees the Mayor of Londonmobile, and the Guardian chef, I'm trying to think of his name actually. Can't think of his name right now, I'm afraid, but he'd come by and saw he was going into the office, or going into the building, going to the Guardian building, and he'd seen sort of like he'd seen Boris Johnson turning up, and just thought, oh my God. And of course, as Boris Johnson locked his bike up against the Mayor of Londonmobile, which is a kind of bow-top wagon, looking really, really kind of like really quite desperate, really, because it was an old Indian rickshaw that I'd sent back from India, and then put a bow-top wagon or whatever on the back of, and Boris had come by and peered, and as he peered and it said Mayor of Londonmobile, he looked over and it was caught. It was just that moment, and it had been so ineffective. I'd felt so ineffective with my kind of mission of living outside the Guardian, and the press had obviously completely boycotted me, and I'd been there dressed in a bright yellow suit saying, ignore me, I'm nothing to, when all the Guardian journalists and that sort of stuff were coming in, I was there with my megaphone shouting out, nothing to see here, I know I'm running for Mayor of London, but don't forget I'm not part of your story. Your story is completely exclusive, nothing to do with any of us out here, you know, crack on with your story, you know, I'm not here. And of course, it was like I wasn't there. Not one journalist in the whole of London was allowed to go near it. This whole story that they run is nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with me. It's got one agenda, and one agenda only: to deliver the rest of Europe into a free trade deal. This is the whole Brexit. Is just a gun under the table to the rest of Europe, saying you lose that $700 trillion coming out of the city of London every year unless you sign a free trade deal. This is all this is. Same thing with Mexico. Same thing all round. You know, this is what this has always been about, trying to get us into a free trade deal, where we surrender everything. And that's what this whole thing is. Once we sign into that, it's game over. You know, we've surrendered before. Nothing can help us once we've surrendered. No external force can come in if we choose to give up all our power. Anyway, that's the end of the message, lovely people. My dear friend Leon has just turned up. So on that note, you know where we stand. You know what's going on. All the love in the world.
We're standing in the mud.
My partner in crime now. Doing the Gorilla Bar with him. And a lot of other Debs, Grania, Garfield. There's going to be a lot of us there. All the love in the world. Hopefully if you can get in there, squeeze your way in, give a blag. We might even make it codename Naburu to get in. Who knows. All the love in the world. Bye-bye.